My sinuses are clear. I put a bunch of sriracha in my ramen.
I love sriracha.
It's the sweetest hot sauce out there.
I do have a sweet tooth.
I said other than mango habanero.
You're a mango habanero.
Hey. He likes his tropical sweets, okay?
I do. I have a lot of tropical fruit shit in the house. You can ask Dad.
That's true. I brought a pineapple crush home for Chloe.
I'm still munching a little bit.
You keep on munching. Jasper, you quiet down. So, Jasper, please! I really want to talk about X-Men 97. It just wrapped up this previous week. I personally want to say it's easily the best animated superhero cartoon in the past few years. And I think it might be a bold statement for some because Invincible, which I really, really enjoy Invincible. But this X-Men series has been incredible.
X-Men, at least if you're comparing season 1 of Invincible to season 1 of X-Men, the emotions that you feel, they're kind of on par with each other. And a lot of the story is kind of on par with each other in terms of like a lot of the stakes and stuff. And I think that it's partly because of how they did season 2 of Invincible. Season 2 doesn't, for one, it doesn't really live up to season 1. I mean, it has a lot of twists and stuff that move the story along. But I feel like because of the way that they split it, it kind of killed any of the momentum I had going into it.
That's fair. I know at some point whenever we were doing this, I said that I feel like there's no real good superhero cartoons that kids and grown people can enjoy. Enter X-Men 97. Finally, there is something. I feel like this is a show dads can watch with their kids or whatever and be like, yes, this is the X-Men team, children. Enjoy it. Appreciate it. We haven't had that in a while.
No. And honestly, they did the X-Men better in this series than they did in the original from the 90s. They did each one of these characters so much justice. They didn't just focus on one particular character and make them really good and everybody else just fall to the wayside. They really honed in on each character, on their powers, gave each of them a story, gave each of them something that made them important to the story that was being told.
I think
that's fair.
Per the 90s cartoons, what gold you're going to get from the 90s cartoons, including Spider-Man, the animated series, is that there is no other medium, especially in modern superhero cartoons, before Invincible. There's no other medium that was taking comic arcs and like adapting them as close as you can in animation, because X-Men and Spider-Man the Animated Series did that fairly well. They weren't incredible, and some of them were like 4 to 12 parts. They would adapt core story arcs for X-Men, which I think is really, really good. It gives something comic book fans that have just been reading it, even though it's not that great quality, like some of the characters suck. I think Jean Grey is wet toast. In the original X-Men, it's difficult to watch her do anything because I'm like, Jean Grey, you're the most powerful mutant, like, within this group, bar none. No, and she's like, oh no.
And you're fainting after using like 1% of your ability. I lifted a piece of toast and now I'm tired.
But I think all in all, I enjoyed the 90s cartoons for what they were and what they were able to bring to the table. But X-Men 97, they really just brought it to the next level. And Adam was like theorizing as to where it's going next. And it's really cool that we have fairly concrete templates as to, like, after we watched the first Avengers movie, no one would have been like, oh, the next one's going to be Ultron. But after watching all of this season of X-Men 97, there's a firm grasp of, oh, I think, like, they've started plot threads towards characters like Onslaught, for characters like Apocalypse, etc.
Or Kang.
No, I don't believe in Kang.
Hey, I mean, Apocalypse, his ancient Egypt one, his major enemy's a variant of Kang.
I think it's like something Tut.
Rama Tut.
Yeah.
And that's why I think we're going to get some sort of Kang tease in Season 2 that's eventually going to tie into MCU in some way, shape, or form.
Either that, or they're going to start... I have a feeling that this is going to create an animated universe. I have a feeling this is the start of an animated universe.
Great, do it.
Yeah, I hope so.
Spider-Man 98?
Please.
Fantastic Four? Because, I mean, the Fantastic Four, that animated series also took place, it came out around the same time, and it took place all in the same universe, so...
Kevin caught that. I didn't even realize that Black Panther is T'Chaka, like Kevin said, and I thought that maybe if T'Chaka is the Black Panther right then, you have the opening to do a Black Panther cartoon where you can have T'Challa growing up, or have T'Challa becoming Black Panther like a rookie Black Panther.
With that being T'Chaka, though, that actually created a huge plot hole for that universe, because T'Challa has already showed up in that universe.
Did he?
Our Black Panther has already showed up in that universe.
Which one?
T'Challa.
Yeah, no, but when?
He shows up in Fantastic Four.
I never saw Fantastic Four.
I'm sure that if they were to bring back Fantastic Four, I don't think they'd... I feel like that's one of the lesser watched ones, because I watched Spider-Man and I watched X-Men. I watched X-Men, like, within the last few years. I didn't even know there was Fantastic Four around that. Like, I've seen there's like an early 2000s Fantastic Four that I've seen, but I haven't seen the 90s one.
I'm trying to remember now if Fantastic Four was first or if it came out after.
Yeah, it came out in 94. It does exist. Okay, well, alright. We strayed a little bit from X-Men. So, I wanted to talk about X-Men 97 as the series. I just want to talk about just some highlights of the show as a whole. Just
the last 3 episodes were the highlight.
Yeah.
Let's talk about moments. Seeing so many superheroes throughout this season, especially starting with character like Captain America, that's our first character we get to see outside of the X-Men. Oh my gosh, it's really cool. The first Avenger is the first character we get to see. And we get to see a few more as the show continues. And you get to see this is within a Marvel universe. It's not just, oh, X-Men are the only heroes here. Which I don't think that was the case in the old X-Men, but...
Spider-Man shows up a couple of times.
Kind of Deadpool cameo at some point.
But it being centered around just the X-Men in the original series, it's really nice to see, as the world was going to poo-poo, all these heroes were out and about doing their thing. And I was like, yes, the universe.
Every single time some cameo thing happened, I was like, oh yeah, I forget that they can do that now. Every time it popped up, I was like, wait a second, that's illegal. Like, wait, no, it's not.
The only one that was illegal for them to use was Deadpool.
Yeah, but that was back in the original series.
He wasn't allowed to show up in 97.
Interesting. Well, maybe they're just getting us ready for X-Men, or not X-Men, wow, Deadpool and the Wolverine.
Watch yourself. I'll stand on this hill. I'll die on this hill. I think the coolest inclusion of any character was that single pan of the Watcher in the sky. I was really excited to see all the other superheroes, but as soon as I saw the Watcher, and I was like, oh my gosh, the Watcher, I think something's about to happen. And oh golly, something was about to happen. Genosha Holocaust, that was intense, rough.
That was when I started watching the show, because I started to see stuff pop up, and it's like, episode 5 happened, and wow, they went there. And I was like, ooh, what did they do? How did they go there? And then I watched, I was like, they went there. It was just a lot more than I was expecting from a show like this.
I heard some people talking about the pacing of the show, because it's supposed to take place over a couple months. Some people believe it felt that they were speed running character arcs to make these plots happen. And even if that was the case, I think it is handled expertly well, because the kinds of depths that we see of these characters, oh, Magneto's our new leader. I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. But Xavier, in confidence, left everything to Magneto, because he's like, yeah, I trust him. He's the guy to do it. Getting to see Magneto start to mesh with the X-Men, how at first all the X-Men were kind of against it, like Cyclops was and the rest of the X-Men, but Magneto sparing the world leaders later in the episode, that was really cool. He didn't have to do it. I didn't expect him to spare them. I was like, oh, well, one bad day, let's go, Joker. But we got a lot of depth to each of these characters that we already knew some things about. I was already excited to see Gambit. Gambit was incredible. Every scene Gambit was in, oh my gosh, he's the best. And then he died. And then even that scene was incredible.
That's fair.
My favorite was every scene that Cyclops got. They just got so well.
They made him the best he's ever been.
It started all the way in episode 1. Because the scenes that he got in episode 1, the first fight scene where he shows up, electric sliding using his optic glass.
Incredible.
And then when they're falling from the sky, and he's like, good job, guys. I'll see y'all on the ground.
The best superhero landing I've seen in years.
Best one ever, in my mind.
Yeah, it was awesome. The delivery of, to me, my X-Men, that was awesome. And then the Scott and Magneto dynamic. Scott has no reason to trust Magneto. He has no reason to believe that Xavier would have put him in charge to begin with.
It's just such a punch in the face of, oh, we fought you for literal years. As soon as our mentor figure dies, he handed us over to our worst enemy.
It kind of made sense from Xavier's perspective. I want my 2 first children to retire. I want them to eventually get out of this life. So that aspect made sense. I also looked at it from Scott's perspective. Listen, I get it, but you're leaving it to the person that we've been fighting for years, so how is that going to make me feel comfortable retired?
I also want to bring up the Scott, Madeline Pryor, Jean Grey relationship. I think that was done very, very well. Scott got all the love. People are like, oh, this is like Magneto's show, and this is Magneto was a star, or Rogue was a star. I think Magneto already had a very strong basis of Holocaust survivor, he's the villain, but sympathetic villain, he's now like a redeemed hero, etc. Scott needed all the love he got in this season, and they did so much with Scott.
Yeah, that's pretty fair. Scott was finally like a human being the whole time. I felt like he wasn't the robot. I'm gonna do it. Blah 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 blah. Whenever he kind of goes off on the reporter, yeah, that was a solid Scott scene. Whenever Jean walks in on him psychically talking to Madeline, and he's like, not what you think. That was exactly what she thought.
That caught me so off guard. I did not expect it, and I didn't even think that it was an option. Adam, I see you munching away, but I feel like you have some opinions.
I do. I love Scott so much. Scott is my favorite of the X-Men. You know, my top three will always be Scott, Logan, and then close third is Kirk.
Oh, I
love Nightcrawler. Those are top three, top-notch characters. And they gave Kirk so much love in this season, too.
I'll give you 9 reasons.
Where he uses his tail to wield a third sword.
Incredible.
And he and Wolverine are just going at it, defeating them Prime Sentinels. It was such a good scene. And then to see from somebody else's perspective how Kirk's Bam thing looks, to see how it looks to be pulled through the Brimstone dimension and out to a second point.
That was a really cool scene.
And then the last 3 episodes, they actually made Jean... I mean, in the whole season, they made Jean and Madeline into very likable characters. You know, except for the whole Goblin Queen thing. That was Madeline doing her thing.
God forbid women have hobby.
That's something I do appreciate this, like, fast pacing for, she's Goblin Queen. And I'm like, okay, now we're over it. Madeline's on our side now. I'm like, yay!
And to see Jean not only be the very powerful psychic that we know that she is, but to see the Phoenix show back up.
I don't know if I'm scared or happy.
She says it showed back up to protect her, and it's gone again.
Yeah, we've heard that before.
And the way that she tore apart Sinister, that was top-notch.
Therapeutic.
Actually seeing her rip out different strands of DNA one by one is crazy.
They don't talk about it, but what is Mr. Sinister's mutant ability?
Oh boy. So, he's a clone of a scientist from the 1800s who has been used, so he's not a mutant technically.
Oh.
His original self and his clone self, pretty much they would kidnap mutants and steal their powers and graft it onto himself. And then there was some celestial technology, I think. Pretty much he just kind of picked through mutants over several centuries and was like, I want this and this. And so he has a bunch of different stuff going on.
Yeah, well, screw that guy. I'm glad Jean bopped him good.
Which is why whenever Jean does her thing, you can literally see her ripping out all the stuff. And she said some line like, you can't keep what you stole from them anymore or something.
Right.
But yeah, she literally ripped out all of the powers he had stolen one by one, which is crazy.
I would like to not wrap up, but kind of group together a few of the characters of Jean, Madeline, Scott, and Cable, which we get to see the birth of Nathan and the return of Cable. And another point for Scott, whenever in the last episode they have the psychic conversation with Cable. Whenever Scott says, he was like, I don't want to make the same mistake my dad did. And he talks to Cable, and I was like, oh, I can't remember what he said. Adam probably remembers.
I don't want to make the same mistake my father did. Cable's kind of like, what is that? And he goes, not saying goodbye. And it's like, my heart, that last episode had me on the edge of my seat, specifically because it was like, Scott and Jean aren't dead, Scott and Jean are dead, Scott and Jean aren't dead, Scott and Jean are dead, Scott and Jean aren't dead. We thought they were dead, but now they're in Egypt.
It was also cool to see the 3 of them, the Summers, whenever they were fleeing from all the Prime Sentinels. It was really fun to see them in a car together. And I was like, this is their bonding.
Did you guys notice how in the intro, at the end, whenever the 2 teams run in, and then there's the Sentinels in the background and the humans screaming, running? From episode 1, those were the characters that we see turn into Prime Sentinels. And after episode 7, I think that they actually have their Prime Sentinel forms as they're running towards the screen. I had to go back and watch that. When I saw that they were the Prime Sentinels the first time, I was like, wait, did they just do that? And then I looked and watched it, and then I was like, wait a second, has it been them the whole time? And I went back, and gee willikers, it was. They were there the whole time, which is kind of crazy to me.
To see them change the title sequence every episode, that was pretty cool for me.
And Gambit was just suddenly not there, and I was like, ouch, that made it real. That really hurt.
Right.
Adding Magneto and then take him out.
Because he was an X-Men for all 5 seconds.
Yeah. Adding Kurt in Gambit's spot, which I loved, but made me so sad.
Listen, I love Kurt. Kurt deserved to be part of the X-Men from the beginning.
I am also a Kurt fan.
Kurt deserves all the love. There's never a point where Kurt ever questions, I'm a Catholic, I believe in God, and I 100% believe in everything that comes along with that. And we're mutants. God made us this way, and eventually humanity's going to have to accept that. And I want to be part of having them accept it, not part of being the people that put them down.
Other characters, I guess we can talk about Xavier. As soon as it started, I didn't know about the Shi'ar thing and him being in space. And then you mentioned it, Adam. But I was like, he's probably not dead.
I always figured he wasn't actually dead. I just didn't know that we should have known that he wasn't actually dead.
I didn't know where he was. And then I was like, oh, space gallivanting.
I watched the 90s cartoon, and then I just recently did a whole rewatch.
I'm on Dark Phoenix right now.
I haven't quite finished Season 5, because Season 5 is insanely boring compared to the rest of the series.
Dang.
Season 5 is insanely slow compared to the entire rest of the series. I mean, the entire rest of the series, for the most part, there's probably only a handful of comic-accurate things that happen, and the rest of it's completely not accurate. Like, it's all writer interpretation of things. Practically new stories, they're adaptations, but they're good. Watching from X-Men and then going into X-Men 97, there's different character things that you see that don't make a lot of sense when you think about the character development between the two shows. In the original series, the emphasis was on Storm and Rogue, and in this series, the emphasis is more so on Storm and Jean.
That is true. I did kind of notice that, but I guess I never really realized it explicitly, but that is a good point.
And the emphasis for Rogue in this series is more so between her and Gambit, her and Magneto, and then a little bit between her and Kurt. Siblings bond.
Does something happen to Mystique at the end of the original series? Because where's Mystique?
That was a question this whole time. I don't think anything happened to her. I just think we don't know.
Okay.
So, unless she shows up sometime at the end of Season 5 that I haven't gotten to yet, she disappears in Kurt's second appearance because Kurt and Rogue think that she dies, but she doesn't die. She ends up getting away, but she never appears again after that.
Went to go get some Tatooine blue milk.
Because of some things that Kurt says to her before she ends up dying, it makes her think about some things, kind of make a zebra change her stripes.
Funny, because she changes.
Shut up.
Yeah, she does. Because her and Kurt kind of have, and this is another pun, her and Kurt have a coming to Jesus, and she's like, why would you save me? I just did some things that you shouldn't want to forgive me for. And he looks at her and he goes, but I'm a man of God, and you're my mom. I'm gonna forgive you because God's all about forgiveness. You know?
Oh, Kurt's too pure for this world.
Kurt's way too pure for this world. The world never deserves Kurt.
Kurt's an incredible idea for a mutant character. It's really cool for the blue teleporting pirate dude to be like, hey, God is great. Things are messed up right now, but I believe that we're all gonna get along. And I was like, yes, Kurt.
Well, because the irony is, if he hadn't ended up at that monastery, he probably would have ended up with the Morlocks. Because of the fact that he's a mutant that doesn't look like a human. And the other irony of it is, he looks like a demon.
But he's a good boy.
He's a man of God. He's a man of God that looks like a demon.
Yeah.
It's fun to see a sibling dynamic between Rogue and Nightcrawler. And it was just also fun to see the levels of Rogue this season. I think X-Men does very well in establishing that it probably has the most powerful female characters, centralized in one area. Usually on a superhero team, there's one or two. There's usually one chick to 2 or 3 guys. All the females in the X-Men are back-to-back bangers. Storm, banger. Jean Grey, one of the most powerful mutants. And Rogue is also a very powerful mutant.
Jubilee held their own in that class battle.
Yeah, you're
Especially
right.
when she was fighting Sunspot there for a minute.
Sunspot. I had no idea who that was. Yeah, I was like, who is this guy? What are his powers? And I didn't want to look it up. He's Sunspot, and I was like, oh.
When they originally announced the series, one of the first characters they announced that was going to be in it was Sunspot.
I enjoyed him because I know that Jubilee is kind of the audience's tag-along character for the original X-Men. Something DaCosta, what's his name? Roberto. It's fun to see that he was our tag-along character, but it wasn't shoved down our throats. I liked that. He was there, but there were more important plots going on, and then we got to check in on them every now and then.
You know, I was just thinking about it. And you know who I really wish had gotten more screen time during X-Men 97?
Who?
Beast.
I love Beast.
I think they used Beast well.
Beast didn't get a lot.
I wonder if it has anything to do with Wolverine was one of the... He wasn't a background character, but he was not the focus of a lot of the X-Men stuff. And I know that's partly because Deadpool Wolverine movie coming out, but also how overused Wolverine is, that he was relegated to a background-ish character out of the team. And I wonder if that kind of bled over to Beast.
But he's blue?
No, Kurt got his screen time.
I think it partly has to do with the fact that the three people that have the most in the original series are Rogue, Logan, and Beast. And I mean, Storm gets a lot too.
I feel like there's going to be a lot of havoc amongst the fans if you take one of the female powerhouses and put her in the background. A lot of people are probably going to have a lot of problems.
I mean, they kind of did that with Storm. She had part of the story, but she wasn't super prevalent.
The whole purpose of her was that life-death story with Forge. I feel like that was just Storm's whole point this time, and it worked really well. That she just gets to fight a demon out in the desert while everyone else is like, everyone we know and love is dead.
Yeah, and then she gets to come back completely, oblivious to everything. Where's Gambit?
No.
Where's Jean?
No.
Madeline,
No. I didn't know anything about Bastion. I've read some modern X-Men, and Bastion's not a thing, but I've heard about, not Nimbus, Nimrod?
Nimrod.
Yes. I've seen I know a bunch of stuff about Nimrod, and I was like, oh, that's interesting, but I had no idea who Bastion was, so it probably wasn't hard for there to be an X-Men villain that I didn't know about, but I still think it was cool.
I didn't know who Bastion Nimrod was. I knew who Nimrod was, just happened to watch that in the original series, but I didn't know who Nimrod was before that either.
Well, Nimrod also appears for a little bit in the X-Men Legends games, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Never played them.
Neither have I, but
They're older games.
Are they fun?
I mean, yeah. So they have the same play style as... Have y'all ever played Ultimate Alliance?
No.
Was that on PlayStation 2 or Xbox
Yes.
360? Yeah, I think I have.
The first one was PlayStation 2 and the original Xbox. Ultimate Alliance 2 was PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, and Xbox 360.
Carry on.
It's the same playstyle, except instead of having all of these Marvel characters, you play through as different X-Men. But he appears in that game for a little bit. I forget if he appears in the first one or if he appears in the second one. But he appears in those for a little bit. He's just a futuristic sentinel that's created by Master Mold in the future. He's one of the main antagonists to Bishop and Cable.
Mm-hmm.
What a mucked up future.
Bishop was in this for a bit too. I forgot about that.
He shows up again at the end of the series, too.
Yeah.
At the very end, when they have all their names plastered on the wall, all the pictures of the heroes, Scarlet Witch, it said Off-World. And I was like, what?
And with Quicksilver.
Oh, did Quicksilver say Off-World?
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know what that means.
I was like, okay.
After X Factor, they do join the Avengers, at least in the comics.
If the MCU Avengers, or just the MCU cast, were a part of this X-Men stuff, so many more characters would have been a little more gung-ho about helping out the X-Men. Whenever Captain America showed up with Rogue, and he was like, thanks to the government, I was like, not MCU Steve Rogers. He would have been like, let's go beat up these bad guys. I think it would have been fun to see at least the dynamic of some of these characters, and because I know Tony Stark would show up and start making fun of the Holocaust victim. Captain America would be like, all right, we'll help out. I don't know. I feel like it'd be much different.
Maybe in a way. I mean, it depends. If it's pre-Civil War Steve, he had a little bit more connection with the government than post-Civil War Steve.
I'm saying post-Civil War Steve. before Endgame, but like around Infinity War. And I guess it's unfair for me to like to choose a certain point, but my brain went to around Infinity War version of the characters. They're at their peak before they hit their narrative low and then reach a new peak. So Infinity War versions of all the characters, I think that Captain America would have been, I mean, he would have been only so much help because he has a metal shield, but he would have been there and his group probably would have helped out. The Wakandans probably would have helped out. I don't know. I'll talk for another day. It's just something that sits in my brain.
So you would think that, but then you have to think back to the years and years and years of these comic book characters just completely ignoring mutant issues.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these characters, they stand for like, this is bad and this is bad and we're good guys and da-da-da-da-da. And then they completely ignore everything that's going on with the X-Men.
How to ruin Peter Parker's life. That guy's an X-Men.
You know what's funny? There's actually an alternate universe where instead of humans being the high point of society and mutants being at the bottom, it's actually the flip-flop. So mutants are actually the premier human, and then humans are considered second-class citizens.
Good.
So Peter decides to use this and be like, oh, haha, I'm Spider-Man, and Spider-Man's a mutant. And he becomes really freaking famous. Until somebody tests him, they actually test his blood and find out, oh, you're radioactive. Your shit's not genetic. And so his entire life falls apart and he hangs himself.
In Ultimate Spider-Man, they think that he's a mutant for a little bit. He just teams up with the X-Men for a little while, and then he dates Kitty Pryde. But then they're like, hey, he's not an X-Men. So, any lasting thoughts for this series or this season? If people had to know about things you're thinking about, or things you've thought about this season, what are they? I was just going through some of the characters and just like high points for characters, just fun things about characters. We didn't hit everybody, but like we were but 3.
There is one elephant in the room that we missed.
Whoa.
Uh-oh.
The end of episode 9.
Is that whenever Magneto goes Magneto?
And full-on pulls the adamantium out of Wolverine.
Oh, yeah. That I'm thinking of the end of episode 8. Yeah, that one where... Oh, yeah, Wolverine's still just, like, in a coma, basically.
Yeah, and then...
Morph confesses?
Yeah, Morph. I like Morph.
Him showing up as the Hulk was pretty cool.
Do we know where Wolverine ended up at the end? Like, what time?
No, we don't know where Wolverine and Morph are.
Yeah, that's what I thought of.
Rogue ended up in past Egypt.
Yeah.
Syke and Jean are in future Egypt.
Because they saw Nathan.
And his kind of sister. Daughter? Sister? Daughter? I don't remember.
I'm a Batman fan.
Mother, whatever her name was. She's Hope Summers, I think.
Oh.
She's Rachel Summers.
So many Summers.
Yeah, she's an alternate timeline child of Jean and Scott, I think.
Yeah, because eventually, after all the time travel shenanigans with Bishop and Cable, the timeline resets and Hope replaces Rachel.
Yes.
There ends up being a story eventually where Rachel is still somewhere in the time stream, and her getting replaced makes her really upset with Hope.
Fair.
So there's that too.
Personally, I'm not a fan of being replaced either. But yeah, no, Wolverine is just kind of in a weird spot right now where it doesn't have his adamantium.
I was honestly surprised that they went that far.
When that happened, I was like, oh no. I was like, they are doing Wolverine.
At least he didn't die like he did in the comics.
Wasn't it Fatal Attractions when that happens?
I think so.
From the bowels of my comic book knowledge, I know so little about X-Men.
But he dies in the comics from the shock.
Yeah, I mean, it is a pretty big shock.
Give me your skin, boy.
Right.
Or give me your bones.
Give me your bones, boy. He's the best around. He got some ideas from those Holocaust camps.
Oh my god.
He said, put this in the back pocket.
I just think it's weird that Magneto has control over magnetism.
Yeah.
Why does that allow him to melt metal?
Because he's awesome.
Yeah, that is a good question. I mean, there is a way you can use electricity to heat things up, which he can kind of do. If you create a field and run current around it, you can heat up metal, like, very quickly, very hot. It's called induction.
Wow, I learned something.
But would that be hot enough to melt adamantium?
It's different for each metal, and since adamantium isn't exactly a real thing.
I believe in Magneto's abilities.
I tell you with the depths of my materials knowledge. I have a degree in this.
My favorite moment for Magneto throughout the entire series was in the Raid of Genosha, whenever he's in his little ball. He tells the child it's going to be okay, and the kid talks back to him. then it's just over. And I was like, wow. I'm glad he's not dead. But if they would have killed Magneto there, I was like, way to go out better than like every other hero.
We did find out that Leech is dead, and at some point he's like, I watched his eyes melt from his skull, and I was like, oh my god. You made me lie to a boy who I said would never be afraid again, and then I watched his eyes melt from his skull, and I was like, oh, God, Leech did nothing wrong.
Wasn't Leech Morlock?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, the crazy thing about Leech is Leech's ability is weakening other mutant abilities.
Yep.
So the fact that, just imagine how powerful Magneto is to have still been able to hold as much as he was with Leech sitting right there.
Yeah, Leech was right there. He was pinning Gambit and Rogue, and he was defending these. Yeah, Magneto was incredible.
It does kind of check out, because the first thing he does when he gets free is just does a worldwide EMP. Some pretty good skills.
Yeah, that was my first thought when Chad was like, so my favorite scene for Magneto, I was just gonna start chanting in the background, EMP.
Out of all the things I've seen Magneto do, I was like, I'm behind it.
Yeah.
Screw those dirty humans.
An EMP so powerful that knocked the entire Earth out of whack. Not just the electric systems, but the fact that it would have endangered humanity's entire existence.
Yeah, the world was gonna end.
Charles straight up taking over his mind to undo it. That's some new ground for Charles.
He's never done it in the animated series. He's done it before in the movies.
Yeah.
He did it to Eric in Days of Future Past.
Standout Charles Xavier moment for me was whenever he took all those aliens to school. I was like, peak Xavier. He didn't want to start any problems, and he's not a fighter. He was just like, all right, we're in class. You're going to have to raise your hand. And I was like, yes, sir.
I am a teacher.
We love Professor Charles Xavier.
That's true.
But we also hate Professor Charles Xavier because of the asshole he becomes eventually.
And that's also true. This is the Rappy-Roo portion. We didn't talk nearly enough about Gambit, and I like Gambit, so I want to talk a little bit about Gambit.
Tell me about Gambit, Chad.
I think he's amazing. He took off his shirt, and I was like, what a man. And then he had that incredible Cajun accent. I don't think Cajun is the correct way to say it, but
I think you're right.
Spicy accent.
That's why Rogue called him the Cajun.
It was fun to see Gambit while he was around. I didn't expect the emotional tugs I was going to get from this man.
His last scene with Rogue, whenever she's like, I can't love you, and he's like, okay, just let me be in your life, and that's enough for me. And I was like, he's just like accepting it? I was like, wow.
He did mention, he was like, something is like deeper than skin, something like that.
And then he was just basically like, if you want me to wait for you, I will.
Because he's a good man.
I was like, dude just literally said like everything right there, I guess. He was like, that's your choice. And he's like, I can't see myself with anyone but you. That one hurt. I kind of clued in. This is more than just, there's more to this show than just what's on the surface.
Yeah, in hindsight, it was definitely written like a goodbye scene, I have to say.
Yeah.
I know it now.
Just that scene where he's like, I'll always love you even if we aren't together. I was just like, wow, like that's, like I said, that's where it kind of clicked in. Because what got me into watching this was people talking about episode 5, and they were like, that scene with Gambit and Rogue, and I was like, oh, this must be that scene, not the scene where Gambit dies for her. Yeah.
Well. I guess all in all, to anybody who hasn't watched it, and anyone that's listening, you should watch X-Men 97. It's incredible. I think it's better than everything else that Marvel has had to offer for quite some time. And I've enjoyed things like Loki. I've enjoyed WandaVision, Falcon and Winter Soldier. I've enjoyed a number of the things been put out. But this one felt genuine. This one felt real. Even the what if things, those are animated. But like this is animation. They did this one much, much better.
It also just looked really good the whole time.
Yeah, it looked great the whole time.
As I'm going back through the old one, there are some parts that don't quite hold up. But this feels like the style will hold up.
Well, I'm sure we have a million more things to say because we can talk forever. But I think that's where I'm going to cut this one off. I'm very thankful that both Mr. Adam and Mr. Kevin were able to join. You can't see it, but Kevin dabbed. And he dabbed again. And he's hitting it. I'm very thankful to have both of them here. X-Men 97 has been great. It was great, and I can't wait for more X-Men. I can't wait for the Deadpool Wolverine movie that's about to come out around the corner. X-Men stocks are up this year.
X-Men stock is up.
Thank you for joining me, my friends. I'm going to hit them with the goodbye.
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 Bye, friends.